Luna had been a mother for exactly 17 days when death came for her children. The Lynx had given birth to 4 perfect kittens in the safety of her den beneath the old oak tree, just 500 meters from Mercy General Hospital in the Montana wilderness. Each morning she would emerge from the earth to hunt, her maternal instincts sharp as winter steel, returning with small prey to feed her growing family. But on that cold October morning, when she returned from her hunting expedition, she found her den flooded with rainwater from the unprecedented storm that had battered the region overnight. 4 tiny bodies floated motionless in the muddy water, their spotted fur matted and lifeless. The sound that escaped Luna's throat was not quite a howl, not quite a whimper, but something far more primal. It was the sound of a mother's heart breaking into pieces so small they could never be reassembled. She spent the entire day digging frantically, trying to drain the water, pawing at her kitten's small forms, as if she could somehow bring them back to life through sheer determination. By evening, Luna sat motionless beside her destroyed home, her golden eyes staring at nothing, her body trembling not from cold, but from a grief so profound it seemed to rewrite her very DNA. Dr. Harrison had been working the night shift at Mercy General for 15 years, but he had never experienced a night quite like this one. The hospital, normally a beacon of healing and hope, was struggling under the weight of storm-related emergencies. Power lines were down throughout the county. The emergency generators were working overtime, and the staff was running on coffee and determination. As the chief of pediatrics, Dr. Harrison found himself coordinating between departments, ensuring that the hospital's youngest patients received the care they needed despite the chaos. In the midst of this turmoil, baby Emma Miller had arrived earlier that evening. Born prematurely at 34 weeks, she weighed just 4 pounds and 3 ounces, a tiny fighter with wisps of golden hair and the bluest eyes anyone at the hospital had ever seen. Her parents, Michael and Sarah Miller, were young and terrified, clutching each other's hands as Dr. Harrison explained that while Emma was stable, she would need to remain in the neonatal intensive care unit for several weeks. The storm had knocked out the main power grid, forcing the hospital to rely on backup generators that hummed and rattled throughout the building. The heating system was struggling, and despite the staff's best efforts, certain areas of the hospital remained uncomfortably cold. The pediatric ward, located on the ground floor with large windows facing the forest, was particularly affected. Nurse Eleanor Vance had been assigned to monitor Emma throughout the night. Eleanor was a mother herself, with 3 children at home, and she felt an immediate connection to the tiny baby, who seemed so fragile, yet so determined to survive. As the hours passed and the storm continued to rage outside, Eleanor made regular checks on Emma, adjusting her blankets and monitoring her vital signs with the devotion of a guardian angel. Meanwhile, Luna wandered through the forest like a ghost, her paws carrying her without conscious direction. The scent trails she had known for years seemed meaningless now. The landmarks that had once guided her hunts felt foreign and empty. She was operating on instinct alone, a broken compass spinning wildly as she searched for something she could not name. Her path, seemingly random, led her closer and closer to the glowing windows of Mercy General Hospital. The building stood like a lighthouse against the storm, its emergency lighting casting long rectangles of yellow warmth across the wet grass. Luna had always avoided human structures, but tonight was different. Tonight, the pain in her chest was so overwhelming that her usual caution had been replaced by a desperate need for something she could not identify. She approached the building slowly, her nose testing the air for danger, her ears tipped with their distinctive black tufts rotating like radar dishes as she processed the unfamiliar sounds of human activity. As Luna circled the hospital, she began to detect something that made her freeze in place. It was a scent unlike anything she had encountered in her 4 years of life, yet somehow deeply familiar. It was the scent of new life, of innocence, of something small and vulnerable that needed protection. The maternal instincts that had been shattered by the loss of her kittens suddenly sparked back to life, stronger than ever before. The smell was coming from the ground floor windows of the pediatric ward. Luna approached cautiously, her large paws silent on the wet concrete of the small patio area that had been designed as a healing garden for patients and their families. Through the window, she could see into a dimly lit room where several cribs were arranged in neat rows. Most were empty due to the storm-related power issues, but one contained a small bundle that immediately captured Luna's complete attention. Baby Emma was sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath, completely unaware that a wild predator was watching her from just beyond the glass. But Luna saw nothing predatory in this moment. Instead, she saw what her broken maternal heart needed most desperately, a baby who needed a mother. The window was slightly opened to provide ventilation in the overheated room. Eleanor had cracked it earlier when the backup heating system had overcompensated, making the room uncomfortably warm. It was a gap of no more than 6 inches, but for a determined lynx, it was more than enough. Luna had never attempted to enter a human building before, but desperation gave her courage she did not know she possessed. She worked her slender body through the opening with the fluid grace that only wild felines possess, her thick fur compressing as she squeezed through the gap. Her paws touched the linoleum floor of the hospital room with barely a whisper of sound. The room smelled of antiseptic and warm milk, of clean blankets, and the indefinable scent of hope that seemed to permeate all places where new life was nurtured. Luna moved toward Emma's crib with the careful steps of a mother approaching her own child. Her golden eyes, which had been dull with grief for hours, now burned with renewed purpose. Emma stirred slightly as Luna's warm breath touched her face, but she did not wake. The baby seemed to sense no danger from this unusual visitor. Instead, some ancient recognition seemed to pass between them, a communication that transcended species and spoke directly to the universal language of need and protection. Luna's next actions would later be debated by animal behaviorists and psychologists around the world, but in that moment they felt as natural as breathing. She gently grasped Emma's blanket in her teeth, working with infinite care to lift the baby from her crib. Emma weighed less than her own kitten's head, and Luna's movements were guided by an instinct so powerful it felt like a physical force directing her actions. With Emma secure in her grasp, Luna turned toward the window. The baby remained asleep, her small body warm and trusting against Luna's fur. The lynx's maternal programming had taken complete control now, overriding years of learned behavior about avoiding humans and staying hidden. All that mattered was protecting this small, vulnerable life that had somehow become hers to guard. Luna slipped back through the window with her precious cargo, her paws finding secure purchase on the wet concrete outside. The storm was beginning to subside, but the night was still cold and dark. Luna needed a shelter for her new baby. Somewhere safe and warm, where they could both rest until morning, brought new challenges. She carried Emma across the hospital grounds, moving away from the building toward a small maintenance shed that stood at the edge of the property. The structure was unlocked and contained gardening supplies and outdoor furniture stored for the winter. More importantly, it was dry and relatively warm, sheltered from the wind and rain. Luna carefully placed Emma on a pile of canvas tarps, then curled her own body around the baby in a protective circle. Her thick fur provided insulation against the cold, and her body heat created a warm cocoon that kept Emma comfortable throughout the remainder of the night. The baby slept peacefully, occasionally making the small sounds that all infants make in their dreams, while Luna remained awake and alert, her senses tuned to any potential threats. As dawn approached, Luna felt a contentment she had not experienced since before the flood. The emptiness in her chest had been filled by this small human life that depended on her for protection. She licked Emma's forehead gently, tasting the salt of human skin and finding it surprisingly familiar. The baby's scent had become as precious to her as the scent of her own lost kittens. But Luna's peaceful night was about to end. Back inside Mercy General Hospital, Nurse Eleanor Vance was beginning her morning rounds, and her first stop would be Emma's crib. The discovery of an empty bed and an open window would trigger a hospital-wide emergency that would bring Luna's new role as a mother into direct conflict with the human world that was desperately searching for their missing baby. The scream that shattered the morning quiet of Mercy General Hospital came from Nurse Eleanor Vance. She had entered the pediatric ward at exactly 6:30 in the morning, carrying a bottle of formula and wearing the gentle smile she reserved for her youngest patients. The smile died on her lips when she saw Emma's empty crib, the blankets pushed aside, and the window standing open like an accusation against the dawn sky. Eleanor's hands trembled as she checked every corner of the room, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes were telling her. She looked under cribs, behind medical equipment, inside cabinets large enough to hide a baby, her movements becoming increasingly frantic with each empty space she discovered. When she finally accepted that Emma was truly gone, her training kicked in, and she pressed the emergency button that would summon every available staff member to the pediatric ward. Dr. Harrison arrived within minutes, his lab coat still wrinkled from the night shift that had never quite ended. Behind him came a stream of nurses, security guards, and administrators, all converging on the small room where Emma had spent her first and only night at Mercy General. The open window told a story that no one wanted to believe, but the muddy paw prints on the windowsill confirmed their worst fears. While the hospital erupted in controlled chaos, Luna was experiencing the most peaceful morning of her adult life. Emma had awakened with the sunrise, her blue eyes opening slowly as she processed her unfamiliar surroundings. Most babies would have cried upon finding themselves in the arms of a wild animal, but Emma seemed to possess an unusual calm. She studied Luna's face with the serious concentration that very young children sometimes display, as if she were memorizing every detail of her unlikely protector. Luna responded to Emma's gaze by grooming her gently, her rough tongue cleaning the baby's face and hands with the same careful attention she had once given her own kittens. Emma giggled at the sensation, a sound so pure and joyful that Luna felt something shift in her chest. The grief that had consumed her for days began to transform into something else entirely. Not healing exactly, but a redirection of her maternal energy toward this small human who seemed to need her as desperately as she needed to be needed. The maintenance shed where they had spent the night was not suitable for long-term occupancy, Luna knew instinctively. Emma would need food, warmth, and medical care that Luna could not provide, but the Lynx was not ready to surrender her new baby to the humans who would surely take her away. Instead, Luna began to plan a relocation to her backup den, a small cave she had discovered during her territory explorations, but had never used. The cave was located approximately 2 miles from the hospital, nestled in a rocky outcrop that provided natural protection from weather and predators. It was too far for Luna to carry Emma in a single trip, especially during daylight hours when humans might spot them. She would need to wait for darkness, which meant spending the entire day hidden in the shed while the hospital search teams scoured the surrounding area. Dr. Harrison had called the local police within an hour of discovering Emma's disappearance, and by mid-morning, the hospital grounds were crawling with law enforcement officers, search dogs, and volunteers from the community. The official theory was that someone had entered the hospital during the storm and abducted Emma, but the wildlife tracker who examined the paw prints had a different opinion. Hunter Miller had been tracking animals in Montana for over 20 years, and he recognized lynx prints when he saw them. He kept his conclusions to himself initially, knowing how absurd they would sound to people unfamiliar with animal behavior. A lynx stealing a human baby was the stuff of fairy tales, not police reports. But as the hours passed and no human perpetrator emerged, Hunter began to share his theory with Dr. Harrison and the investigating officers. The search expanded to include the forest surrounding the hospital, with teams moving in coordinated sweeps through the underbrush. They were looking for signs of Emma, but they were also now alert for any indication of Lynx activity. Luna heard them coming long before they reached the maintenance shed, her keen hearing picking up the sound of multiple footsteps and human voices discussing search patterns. Emma had been feeding regularly throughout the morning, but not on anything Luna could provide. The baby was clearly hungry, and Luna faced her first major crisis as an adoptive mother. She could hunt for herself, but she could not produce milk for Emma, nor could she properly process human baby food, even if she could obtain it. The practical limitations of cross-species motherhood were becoming apparent. As the search teams drew closer to their hiding place, Luna made a decision that would define the next 24 hours. She carefully picked up Emma in her mouth, supporting the baby's weight against her chest, and slipped out the back of the shed through a gap in the wooden slats. Moving with the silent efficiency that had kept her alive in the wild, Luna began the dangerous journey toward her backup den. The route required crossing open ground, where Luna would be visible to anyone scanning the area with binoculars. She waited for a cloud to cover the sun, using the momentary dimming of light to dash across a meadow with Emma held securely against her body. The baby seemed to understand the need for quiet, making only the softest sounds as Luna navigated fallen logs and dense undergrowth. Meanwhile, the search at the hospital was intensifying. As the afternoon search expanded toward the rocky hills, Michael and Sarah Miller arrived at the hospital. Paralyzed by terror, Dr. Harrison faced a nightmare, coordinating a massive search while managing a growing media frenzy as evidence of a lynx's involvement became undeniable. In her remote cave, Luna kept Emma warm on a bed of moss, but the limits of her motherhood were reaching a breaking point. The baby was crying from hunger, and the autumn cold was deepening. Luna even scavenged an abandoned campsite for water and crackers, but she couldn't truly nourish a human infant. By nightfall, the search intensified. Hunter Miller followed the lynx's trail with specialized gear, while Dr. Harrison battled despair, knowing a newborn could not survive much longer in the wild. Luna, sensing the approaching flashlights and hearing Emma's breathing grow shallow and rapid, realized her body heat wasn't enough. Hypothermia was setting in. In a moment of profound maternal sacrifice, Luna understood that her love was not enough to save the child. To keep her kitten's legacy alive, she had to return Emma to her own kind. At dawn, Luna meticulously groomed the baby, cleaning away every trace of the forest. Carrying Emma with infinite care, she bypassed the search teams and emerged at the hospital parking lot at 10 a.m. Nurse Eleanor Vance was the first to see the incredible sight, a wild lynx walking calmly toward the entrance with a bundle in her mouth. The crowd stood back in awe as Luna gently placed Emma on the ground. She lay down for one final grooming, licking the baby's face as Emma reached up to touch the lynx's muzzle. Dr. Harrison approached slowly, finding Emma dehydrated and cold, but alive. Luna watched him intently, ensuring the human mother was worthy of the child before slipping silently back into the trees. Emma was reunited with her parents in an explosion of tears and relief. The story of the guardian lynx became a legend, sparking global debates on the power of maternal instinct. Luna was never seen near the hospital again, though occasional sightings suggested she returned to a solitary life in the deep wilderness. Emma grew up to become a veterinarian, forever shaped by the wild mother who saved her. Dr. Harrison kept a photo of the rescue on his desk for the rest of his career, a reminder that compassion can bridge any divide, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go.